Hello and welcome. This is the Truth Report. Here are today's top stories. Militants target villagers in deadly land-grabbing attacks. 11 killed as crisis escalates in Nigeria. Nurses abducted and forced to treat terrorists in captivity. A shocking account of medical workers held hostage by terrorists. U.S. aid halt heightens global security fears. What does Trump's decision mean for the fight against terrorism and instability in Africa? A wave of terrorist attacks has forced hundreds of Christian families to flee for their lives in Mangu County, Plateau State, Nigeria. In just 1 week, militants have killed at least 11 people, sparking a humanitarian crisis and raising urgent security concerns. Heavily armed insurgents unleashed a wave of terror, leaving families devastated and villages in ruins. TruthNigeria's Master Akim is on the ground with more on this escalating crisis.
In the once thriving farm village of Bunga, located 54 miles southeast of Jos, the capital of Plateau State, grief and trauma hang in the air. 11 residents have been brutally killed by land-grabbing terrorists within 6 days. The latest attack on Friday, the 31st of January, claimed 5 family members in the Ligit Lubang village.
What actually happened was that it started Monday. I think we lost a woman who was attacked by the Fulanis. She was marched down by the Fulanis. After that, the following day, Wednesday, Tuesday, 4 were gone down again by the same Fulani. In fact, one was born. After killing, they tried to burn him to, in fact, completely. Then shortly after that, we thought it's okay, it's over. Another community was attacked overnight.
Mr. Dafer Dushu, a local resident, describes how his wife was brutally killed mere feet from their house on the first day of the attacks on January the 27th.
Na samu tana da sara a nan, sai kuma an sare ta nan so biyu.
It was on the 27th of January, around 9 in the morning, when we were at home. We heard a cry, a sound, an unexpected sound, and so we immediately, as a community, we rushed into the scene. On reaching that place, we saw a dead body lying down on the ground, and we tried to approach the area. We found out that it is one of our women that was killed. Then we now saw the Fulani they are already prepared with their weapons, trying to intrude into the community to attack the community.
During the incident on January 28th, 4 civilian volunteers were killed while defending with makeshift weapons.
Garin harbin da aka harbe su ne, harbin shooting da ake shooting ne, sai an gangara da nuna defense ne, sai da advance suka fita. Fita wansu ne sai sun dinga shooting, garin shooting kuma su gang shooting nasu ne bi fi namun shooting din. So they want to withdraw. So biyan ciwon su din.
The attacks continued the following days, leading to the death of 5 more people on January 31st. During the invasion, Danan Timothy hid quietly in his room and heard the terrorists rain bullets on 5 of his family members, killing 3.
Annan muna daki su suna daki. So da fulanukan sun zo, direct sun shiga cikin dakin su ne. So sun shiga sai ita ta fita tana ihu, ta juye bayan gida. To ta juye bayan gida, to a wurin ne sai ka kashe ta. To babanmu kuma an buga shi a kafa. So ya tashi sai ya juye bayan gida yana guduwa. A wurin ne shi ma aka karashe shi a wurin. Sai yaron da yana bin nan, shi yana kwanciya daki. Aka caccaka mashi bullet a nan gurin, ɗaya da har baya.
Minutes later, the terrorists moved to another compound 10 yards away and killed 2 other family members.
Gaskiya ranar da abin ya faru, na zo sun dinga bubuga kofa mu. Da suka buga kofa mu yayin da suka cire shi, aska wuta. Da aska wuta sai a harbe mai gidana. har harbe shi, ko da yake lokacin da suka zo yaro na da ya zo shi ya fita sai ya sake zuwa ya ce mama ku fita, to komawa shi kenan sai an harbe shi.
Despite being outgunned and outnumbered, the volunteers managed to regain control of the situation at both instances, saving hundreds of lives before the military arrived, thanks to TruthNigeria's terror alerts, which enabled them to prepare early.
As a community, we have been receiving a lot of rumors about a planned attack like this one. So on hearing those rumors, we now make our youth to be vigilant, day and night. We are always vigilant. That was even what helped us.
Wana iya kira a ce wani fulani ka suna shirye-shirye suna hanya za su zo. Kada ba za san exactly inda za su nufa ba. Muddin ka je labari kamar haka, a iya taimakawa domin mutum ka yi shiri. Yayin da muka ji haka muna kira gayunmu domin kowa ya zama alert.
Despite the presence of a few law enforcements, the situation in the area remains dire, with many residents fleeing to safer areas. Self-defense volunteers are left to keep watch, often with little more than slingshots and pipe guns to protect themselves. In Jos, Masara, Kim, TruthNigeria TV.
Well, let's get more details on how TruthNigeria is using real-time intelligence to issue terror alerts that have saved lives in high-risk areas. Joining me now is TruthNigeria's Masara Kim. Hello, Masara. Thank you so much for joining me. Well, how does TruthNigeria verify intelligence before issuing terror alerts, and what challenges do you face in ensuring accuracy?
Well, thank you, Mary. Over the years, we have built a network of investigative and intelligence experts in different communities that enables us to collect and analyze information, from multiple sources. And so, oftentimes, before we issue these terror alerts, we make sure to verify with multiple sources in different communities. And the interesting thing, which often makes our information very reliable, is that these sources perhaps know one another, but they do not know that they work with us. And so by the time we get related information, or information that tends to agree from two to three different individuals, then it makes it a lot reliable, and then we can go ahead to share.
Well, have these terror alerts directly prevented attacks? Can you share a specific case where they helped save lives?
Yeah, of course, Mary. There are multiple instances where these terror alerts have clearly contributed to saving lives. As a matter of fact, we estimate that between January last year to December, attacks by terrorists in Nigeria have dropped by more than 39%, from 8,222 in 2023 down to about 5,000, just a little above 5,000 in 2024. And according to town leaders and of course lawmakers, this dip is largely as a result of the information that we share, the advanced notices of attacks, that we're able to share with communities, which enables them to prepare both for self-defense and for evacuation. And so I can boldly say that our alerts have helped to save lives. And a classical example is just about 3 days ago, I was in a community 54 miles southeast of Jos, the capital of Plateau State, where residents actually told me that in spite of a series of attacks that led to the death of about 11 people between Monday the 27th of December down to the 29th of Monday the 27th of January down to the 29th of January, the casualty figures could have been a lot higher, but for the advance notices, the early alerts that they received often repeatedly from TruthNigeria in the lead up to the attacks, that enabled them to both prepare for self-defense and also for evacuation. Another instance, last year, I think between the 26th and the 24th and the 26th of July, our alerts helped residents in a community called Mangun, also located in the Mangu area, Nigeria to not only defeat a force of more than 1,000 terrorists that, invaded the community, but also save the more than 2,000 residents. It's back to you, Mary.
All right, Master Hakim, thank you for sharing these critical insights. And security alerts have become a lifeline for villages under siege in Nigeria's volatile Middle Belt. Village leaders tell Truth Nigeria TV that these early warnings allow community watchmen to evacuate women, children and the elderly before militants strike. But tragically, not everyone makes it to safety in time. A Truth Nigeria security alert issued on January 29th warned of an imminent attack in Rob and Fan districts of Barkin-Ladi. Just 3 days later, 5 farmers in Fan were killed. Since June 2023, security alerts published by Truth Nigeria have been linked to a 39% drop in terror-related deaths, according to the platform's founder, Jot Soul, offering a rare glimmer of hope amid relentless violence. Now, should Nigeria implement nationwide terror alerts to curb these attacks? Truth Nigeria's Douglas Burton is standing by with security consultant Laddie Thompson to discuss. Hello, Douglas. Over to you.
Thank you, Mary. I'm Doug Burton at the U.S. Capitol with Pastor Laddie Thompson, a thought leader and a pastor of one of the larger churches in Lagos. And we're talking to Pastor Thompson about something he's done years ago, a security alert system that advises folks in the Middle Belt of when an impending attack is. And the deaths caused by attacks were significantly down this last year. According to Judd Saul, the founder of TruthNigeria.com, it is linked to the fact that security alerts gave people time to put up their defenses and take vulnerable people out of the way in Plateau State, Benue, and other places. Welcome, Dr. Thompson. Thank you for coming again to Washington.
Thank you very much. Well, Laddie Thompson is the name, Reverend Laddie Thompson. I have served with the Christian Association of Nigeria as special advisor to 4 generations of CAN presidents with a purview over about 100 and something million Christians. So you are right, coming into the issue of security. Many years ago, we found out and we have discovered in this war against terrorism, first of all, it's a global phenomenon, but it is local because it has a Nigerian local face to it. But it's a global problem. Now, one of the challenges is that media is a force expander. So many years ago, in year 2000, for instance, we'd been trying to get news reports about terrorism, the murders and all that, into the newspapers and media in Nigeria. It was impossible. Why? There was some degree of complicity in high places. So the media was tightly controlled to make sure that people don't get to hear or even know. Now, in 2000, it was even funny because there were nurses who had been persecuted for not wearing a nurse's uniform, not being Sharia compliant in a federal medical center in Azare. They were sacked because of that. Even that would not make the news. I paid, my organization, Macedonian Initiative then, we paid for 2 full pages in the papers. They still would not publish. So right now, the development that TruthNigeria.com has brought to the table is something that's a quantum leap.
Wow.
Between 2000 and now, I used to set up early warning systems in diverse parts of northern Nigeria because we helped to mold opinion, we helped to, build consensus in northern Nigeria then as to how to respond instead of reacting. Now, we found out that the preemptive strategy is the best of all, but we were hampered to the bone. So to hear today and to be a witness to see what TruthNigeria.com is doing is simply amazing.
Well, thank you, Douglas. That was Reverend Laddie Thompson, a pastor and security consultant, speaking on the urgent need for Nigeria to implement nationwide terror alerts to combat the growing threat of militant attacks. And Trump's aid freeze exposes Nigerian corruption officials under scrutiny as funding is halted. What does this mean for the country's humanitarian crisis? Stay with us. We'll be right back with more details. Well, now a quick recap of our top story. A surge of terrorist attacks has forced hundreds of Christian families to flee their homes in Magu County, Plateau State, Nigeria. In just 1 week, militants have killed at least 11 people, triggering a growing humanitarian crisis. Heavily armed insurgents continue their violent campaign, leaving villages in ruins and communities in fear. Nigeria is facing a dire healthcare crisis as thousands of doctors flee the country. Over the past 5 years, between 15,000 and 16,000 Nigerian doctors have left, leaving just 55,000 to serve a population of 220 million, according to the country's health minister, Ali Pate. With a dwindling medical workforce, terrorists are now targeting the few healthcare workers left behind. In rural areas, extremists are kidnapping medical personnel and forcing them to treat wounded fighters. On February 20th, 2024, two nurses, Esther Maigari and Queen Dennis, were ambushed by 40 armed militants in the village of Libere after administering polio vaccines to children. The attackers on motorcycles took them hostage at gunpoint. Held captive for a month, the nurses were forced to treat injured insurgents. In an interview with TruthNigeria TV, one of the nurses, Esther, recalled being given food in exchange for their medical care but forbidden from helping other captives. Their survival depended entirely on cooperation. After 30 days, the militants released them with a small payment of just $34 and want them to return home. Instead, they fled, fearing for their lives. Their story highlights the growing dangers for healthcare workers in Nigeria, where terrorism and a collapsing medical system are putting lives at risk. And President Trump's decision to suspend U.S. foreign aid is raising serious concerns about its impact on global counter-terrorism efforts, especially in Africa's Sahel region, one of the world's most dangerous terrorist hotspots. Experts warn that cutting U.S. support could weaken security operations and embolden extremist groups. In a brazen attack, at least 46 Nigerian soldiers were killed when Islamic State militants overran a military base near the Mali border. The heavily armed insurgents seized weapons, destroyed military vehicles, and left the base in ruins. The assault highlights the growing threat posed by terrorist groups in the region. For years, U.S. aid has played a crucial role in counter-terrorism, funded military operations and humanitarian programs. With that support now suspended, groups like ISIS and the Greater Sahara and Al-Qaeda-linked groups could expand their grip on the region. The sudden withdrawal of American aid risks creating a power vacuum, one that terrorists are ready to exploit. Without intervention, instability in the Sahel could spill over, posing an even greater security threat to the West. We now turn to a security expert for insights. Joining us is Dennis Amakari, former Assistant Director of Nigeria's Department of State Services, DSS. Hello, Amakari. It's good to have you with us. Well, our reporters recently interviewed two nurses who were abducted and forced to treat terrorists in their camps. In light of this, what strategies can authorities implement to prevent terrorists from using kidnapped medical personnel as battlefield medics?
Thank you for having me. There is nothing that can be done to stop them using medics in the battlefield. That has been a normal thing that has been going on. But the other way to stop it is to make sure that it didn't happen in the first place. That means that all medical areas, medical facilities should be well guarded and protected, and of course the medical workers are supposed to be oriented to what is going on so that they don't fall prey to these guys.
All right. How does the continued targeting of healthcare workers by militant groups impact Nigeria's broader fight against terrorism?
One thing we have to realize is that our medical or healthcare system is very fragile. at the moment. And as fragile as it is, if we start losing some of the medical staff to terrorists, who will abduct them and take them there and then keep them, to be treating wounded terrorists and wounded victims, that affects our healthcare system. Because right now we are talking of shortages of doctors and shortages of nurses, in our healthcare facilities, and then now we have to give up some of them to terrorists. I think it's something that we should look very closely at, because it is something that will really affect us.
Well, now let's shift focus to the U.S. suspension of aid and its potential impact on security. Now, terrorism is a global threat, and groups like Boko Haram and ISIS affiliates operate across borders. Now, with the halt of U.S. aid, how could this affect counterterrorism efforts in Africa?
The new president of the United States have decided that America first. And it does not want people to just spending American money. Because come to think about it also, you find out that although these aids are coming to these different countries, sometimes the aids are misused. So it is time, I think, even for our government to start thinking inwards, look inwards to make sure that we find alternative means of trying to help our security or even economic development inwards, not to be depending on handouts from foreign countries, especially the United States.
Now, you mentioned alternatives. What strategies should African nations adopt to strengthen their own security? Do you believe Africa currently has the resources and infrastructure to reduce dependence on foreign aid?
African leaders and African governments should try looking inwards, just like I said. They should look inwards and see alternative means of taking care of themselves. Because when you look at the kind of aid we get, about $11 million a year, or like I said, about $8 billion in the last 10 years, and you find out that there are alternative sources of what are we doing? There are looted funds that have been recovered. Why don't we use those looted funds and then use it for this particular area of aid, instead of waiting for the aids will come, and then of course some people are going to fritter it and put in their pockets, and then of course we continue depending on those aids without doing much.
All right, now Dennis Markari, former Assistant Director of Nigeria's Department of State Services, DSS, thank you so much for the insight. Now, the global economic and geopolitical landscape is undergoing a once-in-a-century shift as the U.S. government holds humanitarian aid to several African nations, including Nigeria. President Donald Trump's executive order has sparked heated debate with concerns over the fate of millions who depend on U.S. support. The decision comes amid mounting allegations of corruption, with reports suggesting that billions in foreign aid have been mismanaged or stolen by Nigerian officials. Social media is divided, with many Nigerians either defending the move as a necessary crackdown or criticizing its impact on vulnerable communities. Truth Nigeria TV's Ebere Inyama now reports.
A major shakeup in U.S. foreign aid policy has sent shockwaves across Africa. On January 20th, 2025, President Donald Trump signed an executive order halting humanitarian aid to several African nations, including Nigeria. The freeze comes amid growing concerns over widespread corruption and mismanagement of U.S. aid funds. Between June 2015 and August 2024, the United States Agency for International Development USAID has awarded more than $100 million grant in humanitarian assistance for internally displaced populations in Nigeria. Reports indicate that a significant portion of food aid meant for displaced Nigerians has been siphoned by corrupt officials, leaving millions vulnerable. As reports of fraud surfaced, critics say billions of dollars have lined the pockets of corrupt officials rather than reaching those in need.
You know, he's a gambler and he knows what it takes to make a change after first failure. And he has seen the Americans as a nation that is taking responsibilities of other nations. And if you are a child of a nation or a leader and you are leading other nations, you must first of all harness their resources. Know whether your resources can help you to extend hands. One of the failures of black man nation is because of extensions in leadership.
The aid freeze has sparked intense debate on social media, with Nigerians divided over the decision. While some see it as a necessary move to curb corruption, others warn of severe consequences, especially for displaced families already struggling to survive. Lawrence Ubarieke, a concerned Nigerian who spoke to TruthNigeria TV, fears that cutting off aid could fuel further instability. With youth unemployment at 33% and food prices surging, he warns that desperation could push many young people into crime or even terrorism.
There's so much corruption because those only less than 50% of whatever package you are talking about gets to the indigent people, get to the refugee camps. So that as a result of corruption, most of these things are diverted into personal by politicians.
Others argue that aid alone isn't the solution. Lambert Amadi, a Nigerian resident, says the government must focus on securing rural communities to allow displaced persons to return to their farmlands and regain self-sufficiency.
When you come to Nigeria, actually, it's going to affect the vulnerable, particularly those in DP camps, because most of the aid that is sent to Nigeria for humanitarian aid is used to feed them for their upkeep, medical and every other thing. And once this thing is stopped, particularly when it is taken on emergency purpose like this, Nigeria may not have enough resources to continue with it.
Over the next 3 months, U.S. Secretary of State Marco Rubio will review the aid freeze, deciding whether humanitarian assistance should resume. For Nigeria, a country where foreign aid has long been a lifeline and a source of corruption, the stakes couldn't be higher. Ebere Inyama, reporting for TruthNigeria TV.
Well, that wraps up our bulletin for today. Thank you for watching. I am Mary Kanu. See you next time.